Well, thank you all for being here. I have a lot to talk about. I'm going to try not to bore you during the next hour. I'll probably talk for about 45 minutes, and then there'll be 15 minutes of questions at the end, so please have questions. It's much more interesting. And actually, if you want to interrupt at any point, if anybody dares raise their hand while I'm speaking, I would welcome that. I think it's more interesting, actually. So, yeah, go ahead.
Arthur Dales, former special agent with the Bureau. I need to ask you some questions about
Do you know what an X-file is?
It's an unsolved case.
No, it's a case that's been designated unsolved.
Thank you. A lot of TV. It's 29 years, actually. The 30th anniversary of the X-Files was in September, and I joined at the beginning of the second season, so yeah. Can I just ask, by a show of hands, how many people here are writers? How many people here are producers? Directors? Broadcasters? Wow. Others. Other categories. Okay. That's a good mix. So I was really honored and pleased this year with Tom, who's one of my distinguished peers at NBC Universal in London, to be serving on the jury for the Drama Awards last night, and really impressed by all the dramas that we watched. And I actually want to just read the names of all the dramas. We saw Fairyland Age of Temptation from Hungary, Moth Hunting from Polish TV, Octopus from Czech television, South Wind from Serbia, Spy Master, Warner Bros. Discovery, The Cases of Inspector Vrinko 2 from Slovenia, The Highlands, Croatian, The King, Hungary, Silence 2, Croatian, The Uninvited Guests, TED SIA, Troll Farm, Donsu Films, and Vera from Serbia. And then you saw the winner last night in the three finalists amongst the finalists. But what was striking was that the best shows were not only really well executed, they had great scripts. And it is just a truism that you can make a bad show out of a good script, but you cannot make a good show out of a bad script. And this simple fact is something we in television forget again and again. And one of the reasons why I have been at this conference for many years here at NEM Zagreb and in Dubrovnik is because I believe in this message of championing scripts. It's not so much championing the writer, that comes along with it, right? But it's about the script. It's about the work, defending good work. And being part of the jury this year gave me an opportunity to see again how much incredible talent and potential lies in this part of Europe. And what we all need to do as storytellers and as part of this creative community is everything we can to support good work. And that begins by supporting the development of good scripts. So for the past, it's 11 years now, and I have one of my distinguished alumni sitting right here. I have been teaching in Berlin at a program called Serial Eyes, which takes 12 writers from across Europe every year to Berlin for 9 months, where they learn about collaborating in a writer's room, and they learn to think of themselves as producers, not just writers, as producers of their own work, which is something I believe passionately writers should think of themselves that way. And I started on the X-Files, where I learned so much, and I want to talk a bit today about my experience as an American writer and the lessons I learned working in a writer's room and the values that are implied by working in a writer's room that I think are valuable to all of us, whether you work in a writer's room or not, right? Whether you ever work in American television or not, there are lessons to be learned, lessons that can apply to each and every person in this room. And so I hope that today you will hear something that is useful to you, something you can take forward with you and that you can apply to your own work. The funny thing about writing is there is no wrong way or right way. There's only what works for you. And what I like to do is sort of set out tools for writers and producers and directors that you can look at this and think, is this useful to me? And if it is, then you pick it up and you use it, and if it isn't, you leave it behind, it's not for you. But that's one of the good things about doing this for a while is you start to reach conclusions about things that are valuable to you. And the great thing about working in American television, as I did in the 1990s, which was the era of broadcast television, of 24 episodes of television a year, is you learn a lot because you're making a lot. Just the volume of work. The thing about American television and the reason why the writer's room system emerged there and didn't emerge in other countries is it really was a factory. It's like industrial storytelling. Because if you're going to make 24 episodes of a high-quality drama series a year, then that means you have to produce a high-quality 52 to 56-page shooting script every 8 business days. Every 8 business days, you have to have a brand new script that's in pretty good shape. Like it's going to shoot 8 days later, right? So in order to do that, there are certain systems that developed. And these are the systems I want to talk about this morning and invite you to ask questions about and sort of contemplate the values that underlie this system and how they can benefit all of you. First thing I want to say about writing is that in my experience, writing is both an art and a craft. So the art is who you are. It's how you see the world. It's what moves you, what makes you laugh, what makes you cry. It's your understanding of yourself and other people, right? It's you. It's your view of everything. And it's the one thing you possess uniquely that nobody else who's ever lived or ever will live will possess. And that's what we want. That's why we watch stories or listen to stories. We want to see what it's like to be in somebody else's head. We need to see what it's like in somebody else's head. We need stories to make sense of the world because the world is so complicated. And through storytelling, you get to live thousands and thousands of other lives and experiences that you will never experience firsthand. And so it enriches you as a person, and it makes it easier for you to function in society because you have empathy for other people that you've developed through all these stories and insights. So that's the art. It's you. It's what you bring to every story that you tell, whether you're a writer, director, producer, we're all storytellers. The craft is the construction of storytelling. How do I structure a season of a television show? How do I structure an episode of a television show? How do I structure a scene? How do I write a line of dialogue? It's the carpentry of writing. Now, that doesn't mean anything without the art. The construction exists in order to access the art. And the better you are at the craft, the easier it is to access the art and deliver it, right, to other people. And most of us, when we start out, aren't very strong on craft. We have an intuitive sense of storytelling because we've all seen thousands and thousands of stories. Ever since you were a baby, you were exposed to stories. And we live in a world of narrative, right? You're getting narratives from songs, you're getting narrative from your parents, from your friends. You tell yourself a narrative every day. We are narrative creatures. So you have an intuitive sense, and that's pretty valuable. But you don't have a formal sense of your craft. And I can give you rules about how to structure a story and all that, but it's only by you writing and writing again day after day after day that you start to internalize those rules. And you start to just have an intuitive sense of craft and of how to do this, which is why we tell writers, if you can, write every day. The more often you write, the more quickly you're going to get that craft skill up, right? You're going to hone that. And that's why it was so great that I got to start on the X-Files, where we did 24 episodes a year. That's a lot of craft in a very short period of time. And your muscles get stronger. It's like going to the gym, right? Which I obviously need to do more of. Tom does it a lot, but you go to the gym every day, and your muscles are going to get strong pretty fast. Or if you study a language every day, you're going to get good at that language pretty quickly. And the same thing is true of writing. The more often you do it, the quicker you will progress. And if you don't do it regularly, your progress is going to be really, really slow. So when you decide to become a writer, it's kind of an act of faith in yourself. Almost none of us start out being any good, right? But we start thinking, I love this enough that I'm going to stick with it until I am good. I have faith in myself that if I work hard, I will get good. And it's tough because in the beginning, your critical mind is really sharp, right? You could watch the latest Ridley Scott or Martin Scorsese or whatever it is, and you will be spot on about every single thing that is wrong with the storytelling in that movie. But then you turn around and try and do it yourself, right? Not so easy. So your critical mind is great, but your ability to do it yourself, to safeguard against the mistakes you see others making, it takes time for that to build up. So you're saying when you start out, I have faith that if I work at this hard, I will get good. Okay, so that's a really important thing, is faith in yourself and working hard. Work ethic, rigor. That's a really important value for a writer to have, right? Because you're not going to get good if you don't work hard at this. This is hard. The craft part, like I said, by doing it again and again, you'll get better at it. The art part never gets easy. It's always hard. It's still hard for me after all these years, every time out. Because it should be hard. You're not doing the same thing twice. There is no magic formula that you're repeating again and again. Every time you tell a story, it's a new story. Nobody's ever told the story this way before. And you're trying to understand these characters and the truth of the situation. And when I say truth, I don't care if you're writing about, Jedi or, ghosts or whatever. There's a truth to it. There's a human truth to this story. Sometimes make-believe stories are even more true than factual stories. And you're trying to capture that and bring everything you have, all of your humanity, to bear on that story. That's what you're trying to do. That should be hard. But that's why it's a great career. That's why storytelling is a great profession. Because it will never get easy. You will never be bored. You'll never go, I got this, this is easy. You'll never phone it in. Not if you're doing it right. If you're doing it right, it's something you always have to lean into and you have to love and devote yourself to. And then your audience will feel that love. They'll feel somebody on the other side of this really cared about this and gave all of themselves to it. And I suspect every person in this room is here because when you were a kid like me, you saw something that moved you, that mattered to you. It mattered so much that you decided when you grew up to make this your career, to pay that forward to other people, to tell your story, your truth to other people, to communicate that. and hopefully move them the way that you were moved by stories when you were younger, or that you're still moved by stories, hopefully. So that's sort of the background of all of this. I think that's the sort of where I began looking at this whole endeavor of storytelling. But the reason the writer's room emerged in America and nobody else is because America is a volume business, less so now than it was then. It's volume in a different way now. It's much more fractured as an industry than it was. But the writer's room really came of its own, and this whole idea of a showrunner came to be in the 1990s, when television was 24 episodes a year. It was the 4 broadcast networks. That was, there was HBO, but it wasn't HBO yet. And so why did they have writers' rooms, and why did they have a showrunner? Because when you're doing 24 episodes of television a year, it's almost impossible to have a single writer write all of those scripts by themselves. Almost impossible. There are some writers like David E. Kelley who could just about do that, but it's, for the rest of us mortals, kind of impossible, right? Before 1994, the broadcasters in America and the studios were separate companies. And then the Justice Department of America said they can merge. And that's when CBS and Paramount became one company, and NBC and Universal became one company. 20th Century Fox started the Fox network. ABC and Disney became one company. And when that happened, all the independent producers, all the non-writing producers, who are kind of the lifeblood of television in Europe, right? They all got wiped out. All those non-writing producers went away, almost overnight. Because now the broadcasters in the studio were one. They didn't need a middleman. They didn't need a supplier. And that's when, in my judgment, the showrunner system really came of its own, because, okay, if we're not going to have these non-writing production companies, we're just going to do this ourselves, who do we need to put in charge to make sure that this factory runs smoothly, that we get these 24 episodes of television a year, that we have these scripts every 8 business days? If there's a budget problem, if an actor gets sick, if we lose a location at the last minute, who should be in charge of that? Well, not the director. Director's critically important, obviously. Not a non-writing producer, because what's a non-writing producer going to do? It's going to turn to a writer and say, fix this. So the writer became the head of the totem pole at that point. And that's when the idea of the showrunner was born. I hate the word showrunner. If I could banish the word showrunner, I would do it now. I think it's too self-congratulatory. It's threatening to others. I've never run a show by myself. Every show I do, there's non-writing producers right beside me who know how to do things I don't know how to do. So I think it's kind of let's get rid of that word. I'm the lead writer-producer. That's what I do in a television show. That's enough. I don't need, the showrunner crown. So the showrunner came about, and then the writer's room system came about. Now, there had been writer's rooms before and writer's collaboration, but not in the sense that we think of them now. And the writer's room on The X-Files was a great writer's room, and a lot of great people have come out of that writer's room. But the idea would be that you have a staff of writers who are there working full-time developing those 24 episodes of television a year. So think about this. The first day I came into the X-Files writer's room, this is my first job in television, okay? I had been a reporter, and then I realized I just don't love being a reporter enough, so I went to film school at the age of 29. And then, fortunately for me, my first job out of film school was the X-Files, beginning of season 2. And I walk in, and I'm the greenest of green writers, and I'm there with 5 other writers who are all much more experienced than I am. And I'm paid to sit in this room 5, 6 days a week, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, and learn. Because these people have been doing this for a number of years. The pressure is enormous to produce story. And I'm seeing how day after day after day they think about character, they think about plot, they think about theme. I see the kinds of arguments they have. I see the way that they approach different things, different ideas about storytelling, different perspectives, how to make something funny, when you've written too much. 1,000 lessons I'm learning every day, and I'm being paid to do it. Now, contrast that with Europe, right, where writers' rooms are very, very rare to non-existent. In Europe, if you're a writer, you're just expected to be a genius. I don't know. How do you know all this stuff? Who taught you? Even if you went to film school, that's not that long a period of time, right? Here you just expected, somehow you just magically know how to do it. Whereas in the American system, of course you're going to have to collaborate with other writers, and you're going to learn from them, and you're going to get better at it, right? The other thing that is sort of radically different about this system that I walked into was the very first week I was on the X-Files, I was told by the series creator, Chris Carter, oh, and by the way, on Thursday, go into the editing room, go fix this show. Me, the green writer, go into the editing room and fix this show that's not working. I hadn't even written it. And I learned more about writing by being in the editing room than anything else. Even more about writing from being in the editing room than by being in the writer's room. Because if you think about the editing process, you know, sometimes it's called the last rewrite. When you write a script, you're imagining the film. You're imagining the shots and what the characters will do. Now when you're editing something, this is the film. This is it. This is how it's been executed. And you have to look at every piece of film and every moment down to the second. What is the best version of this story? Where should I be at this moment? Whose face should I be on at this moment? When should I drop back wide to see where we are? And you're seeing different choices actors made and how they interpreted different lines. And why did they say it that way? Oh, I see. Actually, this line wasn't written very clearly. Or actually, the scene should have begun here, not here. Or it should have ended here, not here. Or actually, I could fix this. I can add some additional dialogue in this scene. Or I can cut this dialogue. Or I can intercut these scenes. You're learning all these lessons about how storytelling really works, about how film really works. Again, contrast that with your experience here in Europe. How many writers have been allowed inside of an editing room? Raise your hand if you have. Right. Yeah, you want to say something?
But because of a special collaboration with the director.
Yeah, it was unusual.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why is that? Why in Europe do we tell the writer, stay away? This is not your territory. This is mine. Why do we do that? Okay? What's that about? Is that leading to the best script, the best writer, the best project? How do you benefit by putting up these walls between writer, director, and producer? Forget the showrunner title. I don't like it. Forget it. The other thing that underlies what I'm talking about, the writer's room and the editing room, is the idea of collaboration. Collaboration does not mean compromise. It does not mean, this is a democracy, okay, what if 5 people think, 3 of you said you think this is better, that's what we do. That is not collaboration. Collaboration is, there is a creative vision, and we all serve it together. And the best idea wins. It's not about me, it's not about you, it's about that. We all serve that. And whatever's going to make that good, I'm for. And whatever's not going to make that good, I'm against. And whether you're the writer, the director, the producer, the broadcaster, whoever you are in this system, your only consideration is what's going to lead to the best story. That's it. That's all it should be about. And we get so confused drawing these turf lines. And in your career, you'll get so confused about, oh, well, I want this title, or somebody's making more money than I am, or they're winning more awards, or, you know, getting better ratings than me. It's not about any of that. That's not why you got into this. You got into this to do good work. And if you do good work, that will sustain you. That will be your satisfaction. And the harder you work at doing good work, the more likely you are to do good work, not just once, but again and again and again. And that's what you want, right? And by the way, then you're more likely to make more money and get more awards and get better ratings if you do good work. But it's about doing good work. And that's what we should all be committed to. And I'm especially happy there are some people in this room who aren't writers, because I teach writers all the time. But this conversation can't be just with writers. It has to be with all of us as storytellers together. How do we do this better? How can we make this as great as it can be? The potential of this part of Europe is so enormous. And you see it in some projects. But I think you all are aware too, like it hasn't been fully realized. But all of you in this room can be part of making that happen. It doesn't take a ton of money. It really doesn't. It's about putting the systems in place and having the values in you that are going to lead to good work. And finding collaborators who share those same values, who just care about doing good work and not about their ego or their turf or their title. Right? None of that matters if the work isn't good. Right? So, first day on the X-Files, I'm sitting to the writer's room, and then I go into the editing room, and then I go into the sound mix. I review visual effects. I'm going to casting. Every aspect of making a show, there are no doors closed. And I go on set. And when I go on set, I'm not there to tell the director what to do. I'm there to be a resource to the director. We are partners. I'm not his boss or her boss. I'm her ally. We are united in purpose. We all want the same thing, a great show. And so I'm going to let her do her job and let her direct the actors and call the shots. But if I see something that is wrong or that could be better, I'll very respectfully say, hey, I think actually this line, or, I think maybe, do you think this angle, blah, blah, blah. And that director is not threatened. They're grateful. Oh, yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Oh, yeah, that would be better. That's the kind of relationship and dynamic that I think leads to good work. Now, I'm aware that what I'm saying is like revolutionary, like mind-blowing in a lot of Europe, right? There's a lot of countries that still have this auteur thing, which I think, that doesn't work so great. You can make great movies with auteurs, but television is not a movie. Like I like to say, a movie is like a love affair. You come together for a very brief period of time, it's very intense, and then it's over, okay? Television goes on and on, hopefully. It's a relationship, it's a marriage. And a good marriage, as many of you in this room doubtless know, it's about communication and openness and trust, and it has these values that a love affair doesn't require. So, to me, the idea of the king who must be obeyed on a movie set, I'm not so sure it's a great idea on a movie set either, to be honest, but it's certainly not the best way of doing television, where you have to work again and again, week after week, episode after episode. So I'm in the writer's room, I'm in the editing room, I'm doing all these aspects of producing. One of the things that's implicit if you're a writer who's also producing your own work is that you are responsible for your own work. You're not looking to somebody else to fix it for you. I say that, my experience, a lot of writers in Europe are treated like they're brilliant children. It's like, don't worry your pretty little heads. We are the producers and the directors are the adults. We'll take care of this. You just dream whatever you want, and then when we get to the big table, we'll make all the adult decisions for you. And then you'll see it on TV and you'll see how brilliant we were, right? What's the point of that? If you're a writer who wants to produce, it means you have to have standards for yourself. You have to take responsibility. You have to be an adult. And your standards have to be at least as high as the people you're working with. You have to be demanding a lot of yourself. And that gets back to this value, the first value I spoke about today, which is work ethic. I feel like a writer should never deliver a script to anybody else that they know there's something wrong with. You don't need to write a script and you know there's 7 things that don't work in it, and then you give it to somebody and they go, there's 7 things that don't work in this. You go, yeah, I know. That's not your job. Your job is to deliver a script where you go, I can't think of anything else that's wrong with this. I have made this as good as I know how to make it. Here it is. And then they're going to tell you 20 things that are wrong with it, because that's their job. But your job as a writer is to say, I have killed myself to make this as good as I know how to make it. You should make this. This is good. This deserves your attention and your time and your money. I believe that as a writer. That's a writer who thinks of themselves as a producer. That's not a writer who thinks of themselves as subordinate. That's a collaborator. You've done that hard work. It's hard. Believe me, it is hard. It is still hard for me. Okay? But you need to push yourself. That means you've worked so hard on this. You've talked to your other writers, whoever it is that reads your material. You've done everything you can to, and then it takes some ego to do that, by the way. To deliver something and say, this is good, you should make it. You need that ego to get you that far. And then when they come back to you with the 20 things that are wrong with it, you take that big fat ego that got you to that point, and it's very painful to pick it up and move it out of the way, because nobody wants to hear this 20 things wrong. You just want to hear, this is perfect. Great. No notes. Let's shoot it the way you wrote it. That's every time. That's what I want to hear. I have never ever heard that ever. You will hear there's 20 things wrong with it. And then what you need to do is go, okay, I'm going to listen to these 20 notes because I'm here to do good work. I'm not here to defend my big fat ego. And then in my experience, if you get 20 notes, probably 15 of them are going to be spot on. Yep, you got me. You're right. I'm going to fix it. Thank you very much. Thank you for doing the honor of focusing on what I wrote and telling me what's wrong with it so I can fix it. And then I'm going to say maybe 3 of those notes, I don't think they're quite right. There's something wrong here. And the person who's giving me the notes is onto something, but I don't think they're quite right about what the problem is. And then it's my job to say, okay, I have thought about it, and I think that this isn't the problem, this is. And this is the way I would like to address the note. Now, this is such an interesting point in the process, because you are not just saying yes, no, yes, no. You're saying, I'm going to do this note because I think this is correct. I'm going to do this note this way because. That is the most important word in collaboration, when you say because. Because when you say the word because, you are explaining your thinking. You're explaining yourself. You're telling that person, here's my logic, here's my reasoning. I've thought about this, and here's the conclusion I've come to about this character, about this story, about this scene. I'm inviting you in to my thinking. And now you can say to me, oh, I see what you mean. That makes total sense. Yes, you're right. Or, you know what? No, you're still missing something there, Frank. I think you got that wrong because this. And then we can come up with the best answer, and sometimes it's an answer neither of us would have thought of on our own. It's better than anything we would have thought of individually. But look what's happened in that process. Our common understanding of the story has grown deeper because we've spoken to each other about it. And our relationship has gotten closer because we've spoken to each other about it. It's that marriage rather than a love affair. You're not going to get that from the auteur, from the dictator director. That's not going to happen. But you can get that with collaboration. And then 2 of the notes, let's say, they're just wrong. They're just wrong. And then I need to say to my partner, I don't think I'm going to do these 2 notes. I don't think I should because of this, because of this. And again, my partner will say, oh, I see, or no, I disagree still, blah, blah, blah. And you come to a conclusion that makes it better. That's always your job as a writer, a director, as a producer, is to make it better. You should never go through this collaborative process and go, well, that got worse. Well, I did his notes. They weren't right, but I had to because blah, blah, blah. That happens, doesn't it? That sound familiar to people? Like you get notes that you don't really agree with, you don't really understand, but somebody's insisting you do it. That's not what you're here to do. That's not what they're here to do either. That's not leading to good work or a good script. It should always be getting better. And if you don't understand a note, then you should get to the bottom of it so you do understand it. That's the only way you're going to be able to embrace it fully and really make it better. I talked before about how writing is art and craft. In the art part, I think there's 3 parts to that. The first part is sort of your intellectual understanding. Like, I can tell you, this story is about this, and this is what happens in Act 1. It's very important. You have a formal, intellectual, rational understanding. This is my narrative. The second part is the emotional part, which is your identification with the characters, the way you're writing the dialogue, the mood you're creating, right? That's also very, very important. Intellectual, emotional. But then the third part, and by far the most important part, is the intuitive part of writing, which is, I don't know why. I just know this. I just feel this. Something inside me thinks this. And I just want to cut to this. And it should be big. And you don't know. And that's the most important part, because that is tapping into your subconscious. That's just tapping into you, the humanity of you. It's a much bigger spectrum than your intellect or your emotional awareness. It's the mystery of you. You're tapping into it. And so then you put that onto the page, or you put that onto the screen, and then when you're collaborating with people, you need to sort of interrogate all these intuitive things that you've done. Yeah, but why? Well, is it better if we see that before that? Should we be wide here and closer here? Intuitively you thought that, but now we're trying to get to the best possible version of that. Usually the intuition is onto something, but not always. Sometimes there's an improvement to be made. And if you are dedicated to doing good work, you will do it. My belief is that a lot of the resistance to collaboration and a lot of the walls that go up between writer, producer, director, broadcaster for that matter, are really about fear. People are afraid. They're afraid that if they tell you what they think, they're going to be wrong, they're going to look silly, they're afraid they can't do it any better than they've already done it. Now you're going to challenge them and ask them to do it better? I don't know how. Don't give me that note. What I've done kind of works. Now you're telling me to do something. I don't know. I don't know how to do that. I'm afraid. And a lot of what I try to do as a writer and a producer and a collaborator is, don't be afraid. We're together. We're not going to let this fail. We're going to do good work together. Together, we are stronger together, and we will get there. You don't need to be afraid of me. I'm not going to judge you. I'm going to say stupid things. I will say stupid things. I will be wrong. You will too. I'll tell you when you're wrong. You tell me when I'm wrong. That's great, right? That's good. The first time I came to Europe to make television, I did the show called Hunted. It was a spy show for the BBC and Cinemax. And we got this director, she's really in-demand director, who wanted to do the show. And the producers were like pumped. This is great. She wants to do your show. And I was too. And then my first meeting with her, she went through the script page by page. Every single scene she had a problem with. Every single scene. That's really a bit demoralizing. And afterwards I turned to the producer, I thought she wanted to do this. Yeah, I thought so too. And then the next few days, we went back over the script scene by scene. And I would tell her, well, okay, this scene this is why I did this. And this scene, and probably, 80, 90% of the scenes, she accepted my explanation. Oh, I see. And then probably 10, 20% of the scenes, I said, oh, you know what, you're right. This could be better. This could be better. And by the end of that process, we were like this. We saw the script the same way. And she saw that I wasn't going to defend bad work, that it wasn't about ego, that if she was right, I was going to say, yeah, you're right. Let's change it. And then our relationship as writer and director was so close because we were partners and allies, and I trusted her, and she trusted me. And I knew if something had to change on set for some reason, that she was going to call me, or that if she couldn't, that she was going to make an informed decision at the very least. That, to me, is the model of what you want. And when I work in Europe, the showrunner system does not, really exist here. I'm looking for directors like that, who aren't afraid to collaborate, who are excited to collaborate, who don't see me as a threat. I'm not looking to overrule them or boss them around. And I do get, like on all the shows I do, because I've got this experience editing, the director will do an edit, and then 9 times out of 10, I will go in the editing room after the director and do my cut of what they've done. And 100% of the time, they like what I've done. If they don't, I change it until they do like it. It's a partnership. It's a collaboration. I'm not going to change it just to make them happy. But if I can make it better, I'm going to make it better. And that's, when you're doing a television show, you want everybody moving in the same direction. You want everybody going, oh, that's what we're trying to do. If you've got everybody going off in different directions, you're going to fail. And again, it starts with the script. If you have a really good script, it is so clear to everybody, oh, I know what to do. The director knows where to put the camera. The actors know how to perform their parts. The cinematographer knows what the lighting should be like. The music composer knows what the mood of the scene is. The costume designer, everybody. Because that document is so clear. You've liberated everybody to do their best work because you've given them a very clear map. But if there's something wrong with the script, and this has happened to me more than once, there's something imperfect in it, everybody runs off in different directions. The director, oh, I thought this scene was meant to be funny. And the actor's like, no, I didn't know that was supposed to be. I don't believe they'd be emotional in that scene. Something is wrong with the script. Then instead of liberating people, you've confused them. And everybody's going off in different directions. Which is, again, why it comes down to the script. The script is the starting point for all of us. It is the thing that we all depend upon. Now, as you can see, I'm a big believer in collaboration in writers' rooms, which rarely happen here. And I argue for them again and again and again for all these reasons, because they allow writers to collaborate and learn from each other, because there's a rigor to the process. And also, when you're in a good writer's room, they're fun. They're really fun. If you think about you're writing a script by yourself, you can run into a story problem or I don't know what to do with this thing, and you could be stuck there for hours or days sometimes. But if you're in a writer's room and you've got all these other writers focused on the same story, just like you're probably going to solve that in minutes and probably come up with an answer better than you would have come up on your own. Right? And that's fun, and there's an energy to it. When it's going really well, you feel it. You feel that energy in the writer's room. And the person leading the writer's room derives their authority from how successfully they are running that room. They don't automatically get it. Like if I'm running a room and I'm not making good decisions, if I'm saying, oh, no, we're going to do this, you're going to feel the energy in the room dim. People are going to just feel like, ah. But on the contrary, if we're having these discussions day after day and the story is developing and getting really good, I'm winning trust and respect from the writers in that room. And there's an energy that drives you forward and you feel it, and it's really exciting to be in a room like that. Most writers' rooms suck. Most writers' rooms don't work like that, right? For one reason or another, you've got the wrong combination of people, or the person running the room is not very good at communicating or is not making the best decisions. But when they do work, they work really, really well. But I've run, again, into producers in Europe who will say, yeah, I tried a writer's room once, it didn't work. Writer's rooms don't work. And I say, so have you ever been to a bad restaurant? So you went to a bad restaurant, so restaurants don't work? It's kind of the same thing, right? There's good restaurants and bad restaurants. And when you go to a good restaurant, it's pretty darn good. Yes?
How would you suggest setting up a writer's room?
Really good question. Well, the first thing is you got to persuade somebody to give you the money for a writer's room. Right? Yeah. It is difficult because they go, well, first of all, we're at the beginning of the process. We don't really know if we're going to make this show. If we are, we don't want to spend a lot of money yet. But again, this is why I want to speak at events like this and everywhere I can. It's like the script is everything. The script is everything. Why are you cutting back there? Why are you not investing? That's your most important line item. Nothing else matters if that thing isn't good. Invest in the script. Invest in the script development. And look for producers and broadcasters, those of you in the room who are producers and broadcasters, who understand that and who are willing to invest in that, because that is the most important. And it's not that expensive. Compared to other line items in a production budget, it's not that expensive. And writers want to do it. You know, most young writers in Europe that I meet, they know about writers' rooms. They've heard about them. They're very curious. Not all of them, and that's fine. Look, there's a lot of great TV that is made without writers' rooms. I'm not going to pretend you need a writer's room to make great TV. You don't. And even at my production company in London, I have certain writers that they prefer to work alone. Fine. I'm not going to impose this on anybody. But if you were trying to do a certain number of episodes, let's say you want 6, 8, 10 episodes, and let's say you want this to repeat in a fairly regular fashion, it's really going to be hard to do that without a writer's room. I still think writer's rooms can benefit you with an even smaller order, but they only become, I'd say, really necessary when you have a larger order. And then I think you should really consider that. So anyway, try and persuade a producer or a broadcaster, this is an important investment in the quality of the show, the writer's room, okay? Now, as I said, in American network television, it was a full-time thing. Yeah, that was basically your job, was to be in the room. You'd write scripts in addition to being in the room, and you get paid extra when you wrote a script, but your main employment was to be in that room. That's how important it was. That's how much they understood the value of that. And believe me, they don't like to spend money they don't have to spend. So what I try to do when I'm here in Europe is I allot, this is going to sound like a lot of time, it's really not, 2 weeks per episode for a writer's room. So if I have an episode, a series of 8 episodes, I've already written the pilot, okay? So there's 7 more episodes that need to be broken in that writer's room. I'm going to ask for 14 weeks in the writer's room, 2 weeks per episode. And I'm going to only meet Monday to Thursday, because most writers in Europe can't afford to drop everything else in their life and just be on your show 5 days a week. I'm going to allow them one day off because I know they have other things they need to do to pay their bills. Okay, so 4 days a week for 2 weeks for each episode. Now, if I'm doing, let's say I'm doing 8 episodes, there's me. I'm probably going to write, I've already written the pilot. Almost always you've written the pilot before you have a writer's room. And that's very important because the pilot establishes what the show is, and then I can have people that I'm hiring for the writer's room read that pilot and see what their thoughts are and see whether I think they're a good fit for that show, because not every writer is, you could be a really good writer, but for some reason you're not a good match with that particular show. So I'm going to hire myself to write episode 2 and 8 probably, because I created the show. Then I'm going to find another writer who's pretty experienced and probably more expensive to write episodes 3 and 7. Okay, so now there's 2 writers in the room, me and that more expensive, experienced writer. Then I've got episodes 4, 5, and 6 in the middle. Now I'm going to look for people who are less experienced, and this is when also an opportunity where you can sort of try and bring more diversity into the business. You can look for people with different backgrounds, different life experience, different gender orientation, different racial, religious, whatever it is, right? You can bring people into the business. This is another advantage of the writer's room. You're training people up who would otherwise have a hard time getting a foothold in the business. And each of those writers would get 1 episode, 4, 5, and 6. That would be a typical way I would do it. So, yeah.
But how are you going to assess if they're right for the
Okay, so great question. So I sort of went quickly through this before. Typically what happens is I have written a pilot script. The broadcaster has said, I like this. We would like to make this. And my producing partner and I now, okay, we're going to start a writer's room. We've got the money to do this. We're going to make this show. Now, there may be some writers who I know I like and admire and that I want to work with, and I will send them the pilot and say, what do you think? Would you like to work in this writer's room? And if they say yes, then I'll talk to them about the script and hear what they say. And then there'll be all the agents in town I'll also send the script to. And I'll say, if any clients that you think would like to work in this writer's room, let me know. And then the agents will come back and say, yes, we have so many clients, here they are, and I'll read their work. I don't want to meet them yet. I just want to read their scripts and make sure I like their writing before I meet them. Because I may really like them personally, but if I don't like their writing, that's just going to confuse me. So I need to, and if I like their writing on the page, then I will meet with them and hear what they have to say about the pilot script. I don't need them to tell me, oh, it's wonderful, I love it, it's perfect. In fact, it's better if they go, I really liked it, but they have some insights about things that I could do better. But what I'm looking for are people who I feel really connect with this show and are going to be a good fit, but also people who really want to do this show. I've done a lot of shows in almost 30 years. I've only made 2 hires I regretted in the writer's room. And in both cases, I got fooled because there were people who didn't really want to do this show. They just wanted a job. They wanted a paycheck. But once I hired them in their room, it became clear they didn't really get it. And then that's just such a bummer. It's such a drag for them and for everybody in the room, because every day you're like having to correct them or explain to them. They didn't really connect with the show to begin with. And
What do? Do you have a power to just say, okay, this is not working, thank you?
yeah, well, one guy, I literally had to pay him the same. I had to pay him the entire year because that was his contract. But I said, you know what? It's just worth it to me not to have you in the room because you're just a drag on everybody, right? And then the other person I suffered through. But my feeling is if somebody's in the room and is trying, I would never let them go. I would never fire somebody if you're trying. I may not bring you back for season 2, but if you're trying, it's on me. I hired you, and you're doing what I asked. You're trying. So, like I say, I've done a lot of shows, hundreds of writers, and I've only had two bummers. So I'm trying to make sure that doesn't happen. That this person really does want to make this show, really connect with it. And then I might look, if I have more writers available to me than I have slots in the room, I might look to kind of cast the room and go, well, I kind of want to mix. Like, I certainly, if I have like black characters or gay characters, I'm definitely going to want at least one black or gay, whatever it is, because I don't have that life experience and I'm going to want that authenticity. But like the first show I did in London, the Hunted spy show, the bad guy was like this East London gangster, very working class guy who'd gotten very rich. And then his adult son had been raised in wealth. And so his adult son is of a different class than his father. He'd gone to, private schools and great university. And so class was built into this show. And I'm an American who's never lived in London before. What do I know about the class system in the UK? So in that case, I deliberately cast my writer's room. I had this very left-wing British Indian woman, very working class, very opinionated. And then I had this very privileged guy, white guy, lovely guy. And then I had a guy in the middle. But they argued, they fought like fiercely about all these debates about class and what he would do and what he wouldn't do, blah, 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 blah. And I learned from their arguments. And I started to feel confident from hearing them argue and what they agreed upon, what these characters, how they really would behave. Right? And that's an example of how I couldn't have written that show without a writer's room. Not with any confidence that I was getting it right, but because I had people with different life experience, I was able to feel like, no, this is correct. This is going to work, and I think it did. Yeah.
Are the 14 weeks consecutive when you have the room? And
Yeah.
if so, are you having people simultaneously drop the scripts?
Yeah, really good question. So it used to be that my rooms would be 14 consecutive weeks, but what I've learned to do now is not do that. I'll break it up. So like I have a room starting actually next week. And what we'll do is we'll do blocks of 2 episodes. So we might do 4 weeks in a row. Then we'll put in a break, a writing and reading break, to give ourselves time to write those scripts, let the producer and the broadcaster read those scripts, and now we continue. We meet again. We do 2 more scripts, stop, do a writing reading break, and continue that way. And you're paying each of the writers a daily fee to be in the room. It's not a life-changing amount of money, but it's enough money to make it worth their time in addition to their script fee. So again, It's more money, but it's not going to break the bank, right? That's an excuse. When producers say, we can't afford the writer's room, that's a reason not to have they're looking for a reason not to have a writer's room. And I think a lot of producers think, but they're not going to admit this, but if there's a writer's room, it's taking away my power and my authority. It's all these writers here are going to be making the decisions, not me. And, you know, I look at it as more like you've got like this team of horses that, you know, that are now running really fast for you, right? It's not taking your place. It's strengthening your hand. And I always tell producers, come to the writer's room as much as you can. Please be in there. At least come at the end of the day every day. I want you to see where we've got up to. And if you can't be there, we have somebody taking written notes. And I'm going to give them to you every day. You're going to see exactly where we've got to every day. But I want to make sure that you are on the same page as we are. I don't want to go off in the writer's room in another direction you don't like. This is not about taking away your power. This is about enhancing our collective chances of success. Yes?
I have a question about time management. You said that it's two weeks per episode. And do you always manage to really like break it within these 2 weeks? Were there sometimes situations that you were, maybe you had it in 1 week, or you were at the end of the second week and you knew that, oh, we still need to work on it even more, and when do you know that it's done?
Yeah. You know it's done because you're out of time.
Okay, so
Yeah. But like when I break it into blocks, we just have to finish by then. I'm sorry, that's a hard deadline. We have to finish by then. But I have sometimes like I'll finish a day early so we can start on the next episode a day earlier than we thought. Or it takes a day longer than I thought, so we're taking away some time from the next episode. But you really do try to stick to those deadlines. Like I grew up in, you know, network television days. Like, sorry, that schedule is real. I mean, this is a challenge because in America, like, we have no personal lives. It's like, you know what? Like, my wife, she'll tell you, I was in that writer's room till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, many, many, many nights. And here in Europe, people are like, no, I'm going home. It's like, you know, which, you know, I have respect for. But deadlines are real. You know, you got to make those deadlines.
Can I ask a question about the composition? We were talking about composition of like different life experience writers in the writer's room. But what about the professional experience? Is it good to have like you said that you were like green for the green zine when you were in your writer's room, your first one. How is it important to have like a very experienced and then middle kind of like in green? What is beneficial and how do you lead? How the most experienced one lead the writer's room through this creative process? How does it work in concrete way? Like
Yes, those are great questions. So I always have at least one really experienced writer alongside me because it can make my life a lot easier, and because when you're having arguments or discussions about story, I want that really thoughtful, knowledgeable person in the room there. It just helps me to know at least one other person really has their craft down.
more like an editor?
No, I do have script editors too. In the UK system, there are people we call script editors that we don't have in Hollywood. I have them there and they're taking notes and they act like writers in the room. They speak up just as much as a writer would, but no, it's just somebody else that I know I can rely on. Because the younger writers, who I think are really an important element of a writer's room, they're going to bring passion and energy and new ideas and ambition and a different perspective, and that's really valuable. Like, I'd be afraid to go into a writer's room just with a lot of like older, experienced people. I don't think that would be a good idea. You really benefit from having this diversity of experience and perspective. It really, you know, it's called hybrid vigor when you mix different things together, and you get that in a writer's room. So I think that's really important. And then the producers like it because it's less expensive. Oh, I only have to pay, you know, so-and-so for this script. But what I do when I begin a writer's room is everybody's read the script, and we've already talked about the script already separately. And now we're in the room, and I spend the first 2 or 3 days downloading everything else I know about this show. Here's everything I thought about what's going to happen the rest of the season, about this character, stuff you couldn't possibly know that I've been thinking. But it's not set in stone. And then we're going to have conversations about all that. And what I'm trying to do is share all of my creative knowledge with you, so we're all on the same page together. And then that's going to start to merge into, you're going to have ideas. Well, you know, I think, what if she was adopted? And what if the last time she saw her biological father, she was 12, and now you start to have ideas. Oh, yeah, that could be episode 3. And then we start to put up on cork boards ideas we start getting for specific episodes or for things that might happen over the course of the season. I probably had an idea what the end of the season was, which I've communicated as well. And so you'll literally have cards that say episodes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you start putting up cards that are ideas for each of those episodes, rough beats. And then we just keep talking about the season as a whole. And then at a certain point, probably because we've run out of time, I'll say, okay, now let's start breaking episode 2. And then we take a fresh corkboard, and we have cards, and we write on these cards, and I can send you all a PDF of Tom Schnauz, a friend of mine I worked with on X-Files, and who did Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul with Vince Gilligan, who also worked on X-Files, has these amazing boards that are examples of the Better Call Saul board that I can show you, that are exact same system that we did on X-Files and that I always do. So you have these cards that break down the structure of the episode. So, you know, back in the old commercial television days, we had a teaser and 4 acts. And even though I work in a non-commercial format nowadays, I still use that structure. It's just helpful as a way to break, the act breaks are imaginary, because nobody's going to know when they come, but it still helps me. Because if you think about it, if you have 4 acts, in the old days, you had a commercial break, you needed to make sure people were going to come back from the commercial break. So each one of those act breaks was like a mini cliffhanger. Oh, somebody's calling me. No, that's not me. Each one of those act breaks was like a mini cliffhanger, because you had to make sure that they came back. So when I'm breaking a story now, I want to, every 10 or 12 pages, have I given my audience a reason to come back? Is there an act out? And maybe I'll go, you know what, I don't think I need it, because there's no commercial break. But at least I'm asking myself the question. At least I'm thinking about that. And so you put these cards up on this board, and you build the story brick by brick with these cards. From the teaser through the first act. And you may have ideas, rough beats of things that are going to happen in the story you put up in the beginning, but now you're very specifically, as a group in the room, building the story scene by scene. And sometimes it may take 2 or 3 cards to describe a single scene. But the thing you're looking for, remember, this is industrial television. This is the factory. This is how we did it, right? When you had limited amount of time. But there's value in this approach. We would look at, how do you get into the scene? How do you get out of the scene? And what's the conflict in the scene? Because the worst thing that's going to mess you up when you get to script is I get to the scene, oh my God, there's no conflict here. These are 2 people who agree with each other, who both know the same information, but I've now structured the story that they need to talk about it here. That's a problem. So really, this is building this roadmap for the writer together in the room. And by the way, all of us are working on every single beat of every single episode together. So if you're writing episode 2 and she's writing episode 3, when she gets to episode 3, she knows episode 2 as well as you do. And you can help her with 3, and she can know she isn't repeating anything that was in 2. You have ownership over the entire series together, deep ownership. So you spend 2 weeks building this board, these cards, and you can look at it. You can analyze it before you go write the treatment and say, I've got 3 scenes in a row that are people talking in rooms. Is that right? Maybe. Or maybe I can move this foot chase here, so I interrupt those things. You look at the shape of it. Now, I introduced this character here. They don't return until Act 3. Is that correct? Oh, maybe I've missed a scene. Maybe I need another scene with them in Act 2, because that's a long time they were off screen. You just ask yourself all these questions before you progress, because it's much easier to fix at that stage than when you get to script. So you do that, and then I'll just say one other thing. In X-Files, we used to have these things, we call them boos. Like, boo, right? It was a scary moment, like a ghost going, boo. And we didn't have a rule about it, but we'd say, you know, if there aren't 2 boos in an act, maybe there's something wrong. So we just look. And sometimes we didn't have 2 boos in an act because we didn't want it to be a formula. But we'd ask, Where are the boos in this act? Are they there? So you do that for 2 weeks, and then the writer of the episode, who you never want to lose track of, by the way, this is collaborative, but one person's going to write that episode. You need to make sure they love this and they feel connected to it and they're passionate. They can't just be following orders. They then go off and they write an outline or a treatment based on that board. And that is meant to share with the producer and the broadcaster, or the studio, whoever it is. People who weren't in that room need to be able to understand the story you've broken. So this is a prose version of that. And then you give it to them for notes, and usually the notes are not giant because your process in the room has been so rigorous and careful that usually the notes are pretty easily addressed. And then from there, you go to script. Now, I've heard people say, well, this process sounds terrible. You've taken all the fun out of it. What's left for me to do? Everything. Everything is left to do. Because no matter how carefully you've designed that outline and that board, it's still just general. Now you're specifically deciding, how do these people speak? How do I begin this scene? And if you're doing it right, it kind of comes alive in the script. And there's going to be things that change. You're going to make realizations about the characters of the story that nobody in that room made as carefully as you were working. And it's also great because as you do that, you can say to the other people in the room, you know what, I have this new idea for a new scene where this happens. And they go, oh, fantastic. Because they know the script as well as you do. They know the story as well as you do. Or they can say, oh, wait a minute, that scene doesn't make sense, don't you, because of this. And you go, oh, you're right. So their ability to support your work is so deep and profound because they really, really understand it. Now, the reason that we did it this way in American television was because if your script comes in and is not good, then I, the showrunner, can go in and fix it because I know it as well as you do. It was a backup, a fail-safe mechanism. But I know for me, like I still write pilot scripts by myself. You know, I don't have all that support when I write a pilot, but I love it when I'm in the room and I have that board that everybody has vetted because I feel so much more confident going to the script, knowing that all these people have focused on this, and I'm much more likely to be successful when I get there. Yeah.
Is there a point where you get the script from a writer, and then how do you decide I'm going to make notes for him to make it better, or do you sometimes say, no, I'm going to make the changes because it's going to be faster, and there's no more point to make notes for that writer?
Yeah.
I apologize.
It's
Before you answer,
yeah.
that was the last question. Thank you.
Sorry. No, it's great. It's a great question. So I will only rewrite a script if I'm out of time. But I feel like it's my job to give you notes. It's the pact I made with you. I could rewrite everybody's script if I wanted to, right? But that's not why when I hired you, you wanted to work with me because you thought I was going to, help you and help you grow as a writer and all that. And by the way, if you can do it on your own, it's helping me because you're getting a deeper understanding of the show that you can then carry forward to the next episode, right? So I give the writer notes, sometimes multiple passes of notes until we run out of time. And often the writer does it on their own, but sometimes they don't, and then I'll take a pass. Sometimes it's a light pass. And, this happened to me when I started on X-Files. I would get rewritten. The first 2 seasons I got rewritten. And I was like, this is so much better. Thank you. You made this so much better. It's still my script. And I can compare what you did versus what I did and see where you've improved it. And it was another learning opportunity for me. I didn't feel, it's not a humiliation in American TV. It's understood that that'll happen if you're out of time. But it's not my first instinct, it's my last. I think that's all the time we have. Anyway, thank you all. Thank you very much.
Hold on. We cannot end this masterclass without this, and this is a great fact about your work and the X-Files in particular. I mean, the basic thing that you do in terms of producing and writing, all of you in this room, is to entertain, of course. But when something else happens, the magic, when it happens, and it does sometimes, something that is fictional becomes very real. And I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Are you familiar with the Scully effect?
Yes.
Okay, does anyone know what Scully effect is? Dana Scully from X-Files? Okay, you go.
So if you all saw the X-Files, Dana Scully was a medical doctor who worked with Fox Mulder, right? But she was investigating monsters and aliens. She was a fictitious medical doctor. But there's a whole generation of young women all around the world who watch the X-Files and watch Dana Scully and get moved. They grew up to become scientists and doctors. There's thousands and thousands of women, and it's been documented. It's called the Scully effect, that they were so inspired by this fictitious character that they actually became doctors and pathologists and scientists. And that's the power of fiction. Yeah, I'm very proud of that.
Give it up for
Thank you.
Frank Spotnitz. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.